Cool. I'm recording now. So hi, everyone that's watching the recording. All right. So we start with a check-in. But most things in Anna Rebellion, all of our meetings, trainings, whatever, start with a check-in. Check-in is just a chance to introduce ourselves, just to kind of connect with each other and call out distractions that we're feeling. So we'll just do a go around, and I want to hear everyone's name, preferred pronoun, and where you are. How involved you are in Anna Rebellion. Maybe this is your first ever thing in Anna Rebellion. Maybe you've been around since the beginning. And also what you what you want to get out of, and also give to the session today. Do we have a brave volunteer to go first? Otherwise, I'll just pick on someone. Yeah, Sun. Sun, is it Sun? Yeah, go for it.
It's Sung.
Sun.
Hello,
Yeah.
my name is Sung Moon, and I'm located in Redlands, California, USA. I get that this is part of UK, but I just want to know what it's like because I want to start my own chapter in my hometown. As of involvement, not really because like this is my first time, but I am involved with XR though. And what would you most like to give to and receive from this session? Well, to get the gist of it, so that way I get to know what it's like and adapt to his culture before I start my own chapter.
Nice one. Cool. Would you like to pass it on to somebody else?
I'll pick Michael.
Hello, I'm Michael. I'm located in Reading, UK. My current involvement in Animal Rebellion is largely in photography, taking photos of rebellion. I've also done photography for the Extinction Rebellion chapter in Reading. And what I would like to get most out of this is, yeah, just kind of expand more on my already kind of like peaceful engagement, and picking up more tools as to how to engage with people without getting so emotionally invested. I've recently had a bit of a discussion with a guy on YouTube last week, and I think I did a very good job at keeping to those aims, and just would like to expand on that a bit more. So I'll pass to George.
Thank you, Michael. Good to see you. Hello, guys. I am George, he, him, and I'm based in London in the UK, and I'm also in the Talks and Trainings team, and I'm here kind of to learn from the guru, learn from the master, Rob, before I take on hosting these trainings myself. So I hope to learn everything there is to possibly learn about Nvda. I hope to, just learn how to run this session really smoothly, so that hopefully I can take a job off Rob's plate, because he's a very busy man. So yeah, I hope to be able to give my opinions and my thoughts and feelings on certain things that we discuss, but I hope to get a lot from it as well, because I haven't actually done the training myself. So yeah, cool, that's me. I will pass to Steph.
Hi everyone, I'm Steph, she, her. I'm in Bristol, UK. I'm in the actions, and I've only just joined very recently. Gordy actually recruited me, who's here today. So I've only been to a few meetings, so basically I'm just here to learn anything and everything. Have I covered everything? I will pass to Samantha.
Hi, thanks, Steph. I'm also really new to Animal Rebellion. Recently got involved with this group and also Extinction Rebellion. I skipped, my name's Sam, obviously, and she, her. So at the moment, I'm really just trying to get involved with what it is you guys do, how I can help out. I'd love to get involved in the protests once they're back on. And from this session, I think I'd really just like to learn what that involves and what it means from an animal rebellion point of view. So that's me. I will pass to Carla. Have you been? Oh, you've just said you can't turn your mic on. Okay. James, maybe if you haven't been.
Thanks, Samantha. I'm James or Ski. He, him. Usually, I'm in Manchester, UK. I'm on the political circle and talks and trainings circle, with amongst other things. And what I'd like to get from the session, I'd like to learn how to stop being so damn violent at protests. That's probably the main thing. I've had it raised before in the past that it was at Parliament Square, I think, and where the police were taking down our tents, and we were chanting, "Police, we love you," that whole thing, which we've stopped thankfully. But I got pulled aside for like my even though I was saying I love them, that like the way that I was saying it was too aggressive. So I need it fixing, Rob. So yeah, that's great. I can't see anyone else though. So who's next?
I think we just have Gordy. Have I missed anyone else? It's just Gordy left, right?
Yeah, I think it's just me. Hi, I'm Gordy. He, him. I'm from the Cotswold, but member of Animal Rebellion Bristol. I work on the actions and media messaging. I've been around Animal Rebellion from the conception, but I haven't really done a lot of work until just very recently. What would I like? I think I'm just spending this time catching up on all the training. Being in lockdown, I just want to get as much training as I can fit in possibly, and make use of this time when we're not very active. And surprisingly, I've not been to this training yet, so yeah, looking forward to it. And I'll pass on to you, Rob.
Great. Great. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, really nice to see kind of where everyone's at, even the people that I know, and also to be introduced to everyone that I don't know. Yeah, really nice to connect with everyone. These are our kind of group agreements for this training. Hopefully these are pretty kind of basic and pretty obvious things, but I'll just go through them all, and hopefully we're all kind of on board with all of these. So hopefully we can agree to respect everyone's opinion, use everyone's preferred pronouns, asking questions. There really is no such thing as a stupid question, and we're all here to learn, so please do ask as many questions as you like. No blaming and shaming, not using offensive language, especially in the form of jokes. Being equal, so sharing the airtime equally, recognizing that if you're someone who naturally steps forward, maybe to take a step back and to allow others to step forward. Not interrupting others when they're speaking, focusing on really listening, active listening, not just thinking about what you want to say next, but really being in the moment and being present and listening. And using hand signals where it's useful. So we don't need to overuse hand signals, but I will just go through a few hand signals that we like to use in Animal Rebellion. They can be really useful and a really useful way of communicating. So the first one is a point. So if you want to speak, if you have something to say, just put your finger up. It's a really obvious way for everyone to see that you want to speak. Then 2 fingers up is a direct point. So this is kind of sometimes overused, but if you've got a little fact or just something like a little sentence to add, you can use a direct point, and that means that you're next to just come in with that little point. Clarification, so this is C. If I say something or somebody says something that doesn't quite make sense and you just want to clarify that, just put up a C, then that's kind of obvious. A technical point is if Zoom's not working, or I don't know, the building's on fire or something like that, technical point, yeah, that's that. And then lastly, jazz hands. Jazz hands just mean I like what you're saying, I agree, I'm happy. That's my favorite one, jazz hands. Yeah, cool. Okay, so as I say, this training's in two parts. So the first part is kind of about the thinking behind nonviolent direct action. So we'll kind of introduce like the concepts around nonviolence, and then in the second part, it's kind of more action focused, more practical focused. So we've done the welcomes and check-ins and a bit of housekeeping, the group agreements. We'll just talk very briefly about COVID-19, and we'll also talk about teamwork in our rebellion, and then we'll kind of go into the training. So we're going to talk about civil disobedience and direct action. We're going to talk about why we use nonviolence. We're going to do a little exercise called spectrum lines, which is, I really like that exercise. We'll also talk about injustice and oppression in our movement. Um, we'll do a COVID-19 briefing and a security briefing. We'll talk a little bit about the police and also do a little bit of de-escalation. And then in the second part, we're going to talk about how to deal with the public, some resistance exercises. We'll talk about the action cycle. We'll talk about affinity groups. We'll talk about songs and chants. We're not going to do any songs and chants, sadly, but we'll just talk about songs and chants. We'll do a little decision-making exercise, and we'll talk about what happens after exercise, after actions. And I'll just say hi to Kate and Melody, who've just joined us. Hi, Kate and Melody. Do you want to just very briefly just introduce yourselves and just check in with us? I'll just nominate Kate to go first. Kate, are you with us? Oh, I think Kate, has Kate just, have we lost Kate? It looks like it. Melody, do you want to just check in and just introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, this is Melody. Sorry I'm late, I just got home. Yeah, I don't know what else I should say, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. Okie doke. So yeah, so we'll just start with, I'll just talk very briefly about COVID-19. So yeah, Anna Rebellion's taken the whole COVID-19 situation really seriously, and it's drastically limited the amount of protesting that we do, so that we act safely and sensibly during lockdown. That included calling off our plans for rebellion in May, and that was taken in order to save lives and protect people. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that we're in an emergency, where the climate and animal and ecological crisis has shown itself to be even more severe than we previously thought. Also, COVID-19 is not going away anytime soon, so we need to find ways to act under lockdown restrictions and public health advice, reducing risk, but still continuing to build our movement and build our rebellion. Therefore, in whatever way we can, we've adapted the way that we work to be online. So all of our meetings, workshops, this training, for example, happens online. But there's no replacement for action in the streets. And that's why we think it's right to take action now, despite the potential risks. So we'll go into a bit more of a specific COVID briefing later in the training, but I just wanted to introduce COVID-19 at the start of this. Okay, so it's really important to do your research. So this training is condensed as possible so that you kind of get the vital stuff, the really, really important stuff. But there's always more to learn about everything that we talk about. And it's your responsibility to go away from this training and read more about what you learn. It's really important that you do your own legal research, particularly before actions. And if you have particular worries about arrest or your own circumstances or anything to do with the law, we recommend that you speak to a legal professional. And disclaimer, I am not a legal professional. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not a legal professional. And basically take everything with a pinch of salt. Okay, so this is the kind of the first exercise. So I want you to imagine that you're on an action with the people here. And let's say that we're blocking traffic. I want you to consider the following. So how can you work effectively and safely as a cohesive team? And what might get in the way of that teamwork? Okay, so we'll go into breakout rooms, if I can get that to work. And I want you to think about this question. And we'll give you, let's say, 6 minutes. Is that too much? Okay, let's say 4 minutes. You've got 4 minutes to discuss this question, and I'll put this question in the chat just before we break off. Okay, so the question again: how can you work effectively and safely as a cohesive team, and what might get in the way of good teamwork? All right. Is everyone back? Okay, so does somebody want to just sum up what their group talked about? Yeah, George.
Yeah, sure. So I think we laboured on the first point, and then all of a sudden had a minute to go to get the what works against good teamwork. But we basically talked about communicating the action plan, making sure that everyone knows what's going on. So strong communication, as well as planning ahead, so that everyone knows what they're doing. And we talked about roles as well, assigning roles, and making sure people are trained up for the roles that they've been assigned. You can't assign someone to be the first aider if they haven't got a clue about how to do first aid. Yeah, and being respectful of everyone's opinions was another one, so that all ideas can get brought to the forefront, and just strong organization in general as well. And then regarding the what works against good teamwork, if there's no backup plans, no plan B, no plan C, that could damage good, strong teamwork. Weather conditions was mentioned, and also dominant voices and not allowing everyone's voices to be heard as well. And that's how far we got in our mad panic at the end.
Cool. Yeah, great. Yeah, so some big stuff coming out there. So preparation, definitely really key to good teamwork. Having kind of clearly assigned roles, so kind of a clear, like who's doing what. Good kind of group dynamics. Yeah, all of those are really, really important for teamwork. Yeah, cool. And in the other group, does anyone want to just sum up what their group talked about? Yep, Skeet.
Yeah, I think George pretty much covered what we spoke about. But yeah, good communication, ensuring that there's a running dialogue as well. So like regular check-ins, make sure everybody's kind of in a good space. But yeah, as George mentioned, defined roles and good forward planning, and that's pretty much where we got to.
Cool, great. Yeah, really great stuff. Yeah, I think all of that is valid, and all of that plays a role in good teamwork. Yeah, great. Cool. Okay, so the next bit. So what's the difference between civil disobedience and direct action? Does anyone have any thoughts? Just chat out. Anyone want to be brave? Yeah, George, go for it.
I would guess that civil disobedience is doing something for the purpose of breaking a law, whereas direct action doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the law at all. It just could be whatever action that you wanted to do.
Yep. Yeah, any other thoughts? No? Okay, so yeah, you kind of touched on it there, George. Yeah, so basically, although they're kind of overlapping concepts, they do have a slightly different use historically, and it's important for us to kind of recognize the difference in the kind of connotation and the meaning. So direct action is really just anything that you're doing yourself to create change. So it can be legal and it can be violent. So that could mean like doing something like occupying land to start a community, or like shutting down a site. It can be legal, so it could be a strike. It could be violent. It could be like a massive riot, and that's why we specify non-violent direct action when we're talking about this stuff. Civil disobedience, on the other hand, presumes both of non-violence and illegality. So that's kind of fundamentally breaking laws to challenge injustice without using violence. Is that kind of clear for everybody? Yeah. Any questions on that? Cool. Okay. So our understanding of Nvda has these four pillars, these four really central, essential elements. So we have to show respect at all times to everybody. That includes other activists, the wider public, that includes the police, that includes politicians. We always want to be showing respect and using respect to build our movement. Sacrifice shows that we are committed to our cause. It demonstrates our commitment and the seriousness of the issues that we are talking about. We need to use disruptions so that we can't be ignored and we want to force the conversation. And dilemma, so that we put the state in a difficult situation, whether they're tolerant or crack down. And either way, the movement benefits. Okay, so the next exercise. So these 3 questions, I'm going to put them in the chat again, and we're going to do breakout rooms again. And so these 3 questions are: why does Anti-Rebellion have a chosen strategy of nonviolence? Is violence just physical? Are there other forms of violence? And what happens if the situation or others around us become violent? What should we do? And again, we'll go into breakout rooms, and we'll take a bit longer this time. We'll take 6 minutes this time, and we'll break out again, and we'll come back and discuss.
I just needed 20 seconds.
No.
It's always the way. Okay, so yeah, so we'll just hear what the different groups had to say. I might just pick on someone that's not had a chance to speak yet. Steph, would you like to just share what your group talked about?
I wish I'd written my notes down now. Right. Yeah, so why do we think Animal Rebellion has chosen a strategy of non-violence? Because we are basically a compassionate kind of group, and that's the kind of message we want to spread. So we don't want to do the opposite of that, and also because we want to get the general public on board with us, which won't happen if we are kind of violent. And we think there are other forms of violence other than physical, like verbal aggression and possibly like damaging properties and buildings and things like that. And if the situation becomes violent, we should try de-escalation, trying to get ourselves away from the situation, and possibly in that case, getting the police involved to try and break up the situation. Anyone in my team, if I've missed anything, then chip in.
Also, like, you forgot to mention about looting. Like, in the Black Lives Matter, like, you see a lot of looting involved, and that's one form of how situations can escalate.
Yeah. Very quickly, we also talked about regarding the first question that Gordy mentioned that non-violent campaigns have been the most successful historically. So it's the best way of achieving our goals. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Cool. And in the other group, I think Samantha, you were in the other group. Would you like to just talk to us about what your group talked about?
Yeah, we were a little bit rushed towards the end with this last question, which cut Michael off. But we were saying that it's pretty much that you can kind of try and calm the individuals down by kind of reflecting a more calm energy towards them, and that pretty much as far as we went. Just thinking on the who. Also, you could separate people from the group so that they aren't influencing perhaps everybody else to make them also feel a little bit more violent. I might have to pass back to the other group to finish that question.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, basically everything that's come up, I think, is absolutely valid. Yeah, so some things that came up there. So violence kind of alienates parts of the population that we want to mobilize. It's kind of bad messaging potentially. It kind of reflects badly on us potentially. If we also think that the violent struggle inevitably favors particular parts of the population, so a violent protest is more likely that the people that turn up to a violent protest more likely to be male, white, younger, able-bodied. And so when we want to build an accessible movement, we want to use non-violent strategies because it's more accessible. Yeah, if you also think that that violent protest gives the state a full and immediate excuse to crack down with violent repression, and non-violence is much harder to for them to deal with. And also, if we remain violent in the face of state violence, we're more likely to win people to our side. And also, just lastly, it reduces our own risk, our personal risk, both to us physically and also legally, and so it's also preferable on that level. In terms of the second question, absolutely, there are multiple types of violence. Not violent speech, violent messaging, violent threats. All of that can count as violence. So it's definitely not just a physical thing. And yeah, I mean, there are various ways of kind of dealing with a violent situation. And it's always just, it's worth bearing in mind that we can't control others, we can only control ourselves. And so the wider the behavior of the wider public, or the police, the security guards, that's not under our control, but our reaction to that is. And so we can practice de-escalation, and various other strategies to kind of mitigate those negative reactions. Yeah, cool. Is there anything else that anyone wants to kind of share on this point? Cool. I think we've talked about a lot, haven't we? Yeah, really good stuff. Cool. All right. So the next bit. So this is an exercise called spectrum lines. So obviously this is an online training that we used to do in person. So the way that this used to work was we had everyone line up, and essentially, yeah. So we would say that one side of the room is 0 out of 10, the other side is 10 out of 10. People can move around based on yeah, on how they feel. And basically the exercise is about how violent we think different situations are. So I'm going to read out a few scenarios, and I want everyone to think about how violent they think it is. And it's really important that it's about how violent it is. It's not about how justified it is or how much we want to do this, but it's just about how violent we think it is. So obviously we can't line up in a like we would normally. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to have everyone just do kind of jazz hands, and we're going to say at the top of the screen is 10 out of 10, and the bottom of the screen is 0 out of 10. So if you think that something is like 10 out of 10, the most violent thing could ever exist, then that would be up here. And if you think it's 0 out of 10, it's not at all violent, or yeah, then that's down here. So I'll read out a scenario, and then I'll count down from 5, and I want everyone to decide where they are on this spectrum in between. I think everyone basically has their camera on, right? Except Carla, but I think, Carla, are you there? I think I'm not sure that Carla is there. But we can also use the chat function. So if anyone would rather use the chat, then they can just post like a number between 1 and 10. Oh, Carla is there. Okay, cool. So Carla, obviously you don't have your screen on, but you can use the chat function instead. So you can just type a number between 1 and 10, and then we can see where you are on the spectrum. Does that make sense to everyone? Does everyone get what we're doing? Yep. Cool. Okay, so the first scenario. So refusing to move out of the road when asked. Okay, and I'll just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, how violent do we think it is? Where are we? Okay, so most people are pretty low. Yeah, I'm seeing a kind of like, I'm seeing a spectrum between like 1 and 4. Okay. Okay. Skeet, I think you're like a 0. Why is 0, Skeet?
Probably because I've been arrested for that, so I just didn't do it as violent. But yeah, it's a 1 or 2 maybe.
Okay, just to kind of poke you on that. So if you've been arrested for it, that means that it's not at all violent.
I'll have you know I was meditating when I got arrested, so okay. I was about as non-violent as I could get.
For the record, I've also been arrested for not moving out of the road, but I'm not sure that means that it's violent or not violent. Okay, and does anyone disagree with that? Does anyone have a different opinion? No? What do you think, Michael? Michael, you're about a 4 maybe. What do you think?
I think I think it's like, you know, between 3 and 4, because you are causing disruption to other people's lives, and although you may not have direct control over how they think and how they feel or what's going on in their lives, it is still an action that is having a negative impact. It is preventing them from going about their daily lives. which, you know, the cause may be necessary or the cause may be unnecessary, but it is something that you are doing that does have a direct impact on other people's lives that they were not aware of, in comparison to like roadworks where you do have signs up.
Yeah.
That is,
So it's disruptive,
it's
definitely.
disruptive, yeah.
But does the fact that it's disruptive make it violent?
The violent part, I think, falls into play with how it affects a person's being, where it, you know, causes upset emotions, causes, I don't, yeah, it causes disruptions to infrastructure. We've discussed that, but yeah, it causes you know, causes confusion and emotional upset to the people around. That's why I think, you know, definitely below, yeah, but below 4. So I'd say 3.5.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it is lower on the violent, but because it does create that era of chaos and confusion and tense emotion.
Yep. Yeah.
That's something that
Yeah.
does bring in the violent.
Sure. Yeah. So it's worth pointing out this whole exercise is really just to kind of get us thinking about what is violent and what's not violent. There's really no right or wrong answers here, but it's just interesting to think about, I think. So yeah. So something that's disruptive that maybe causes emotional upheaval in some way that affects others. Maybe that does make it violent. Maybe that doesn't. It's kind of yeah. It's a gray area. I don't know. But yeah, the point is to get us thinking about this. There really are no right or wrong answers. Okay, cool. So the second scenario. So spray painting on the side of a building. Violent, not violent. Again, we'll just count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, what do we think? A few undecided. Okay, so again, it's pretty low for the most part. Okay, Gordy, what do you think?
So yeah, criminal damage is considered a little bit of violence. It is a grey area for some though, because it's just property at the end of the day. But obviously there can be, you know, financial implications, distress, etc. So yeah, that's why I gave it maybe a 3 or so, maybe a 3 or 4. So there is some violence involved because property damage can be considered that.
Yeah. So property, like violence against property, is that still violent? Yeah. Sam, what do you think? Sorry, Samantha.
It's Sam. So it's the building that makes the difference as well. If it's just an industrial building, it doesn't matter that much. If it's a place of worship or war memorial, it can be massively more offensive, and that would make it a bit more violent, I'd say.
Yeah, really good point. So yeah, so absolutely, where you spray is really important. Also, what you spray, right? So the message that you're painting, that makes it potentially more or less violent. Does it matter whose building it is? Does it matter if it's like an individual that owns like someone's house or versus a multinational company? Does that make a difference? What do you think? I'm getting lots of agreement. Does anyone disagree? No. Also, does it matter if it's like private property versus like I don't know, yeah, like a company property? I don't know. Okay, cool. Yeah, sorry, George. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're targeting a building that is owned by one person, it's a direct like attack on an individual, whereas if you're doing it against a company, then you're not necessarily singling any one individual out. you're doing it at a company at large. And I guess that I guess spray painting is linked with shame. And so you're trying to, it may be, I don't know, it doesn't have to be, I guess, but you're trying to shame someone, which is like a form of violence. But if you shame an organization, there's no one there behind, like there's no individual to be criticized. So I would definitely see that as less violent than if you just directly attacked an individual. If one person owned that building, that could be seen as a much more direct attack on someone.
Mm. Yeah, really interesting points, everyone. Yeah, I think this is like an interesting, just an interesting debate. Okay, very last one before we move on. Okay, breaking into a farm to liberate the animals inside. Violent, not violent. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, what do we think? Okay, some pretty high ones and some pretty low ones. Okay, so Gordy again. So you're like a 0. Why a 0?
Yeah, because I don't consider farm animals as property. So, and liberation is, I mean, I wouldn't say that was violent. Is quite the opposite of violence, because you're freeing them from a violent situation. The breaking in bit, maybe, but you know, farms, I mean, they don't take that much to break into. You can do it without any damage. So yeah, obviously it's subjective. My viewpoint on what is considered, or who is considered property and who isn't considered property, or what isn't considered property, is probably different than some people. But yeah, that's why I was down to 0.
Cool. Sung, what do you think? Sung?
I mean, I get that it's right to rescue and liberate all the animals from farms, but I mean, the law states that it is violent and you could get arrested for doing that. I mean, no matter how right you are.
So again, it comes back to this thing of, so the law says that it's violent, that you can get arrested for it. Does that make it violent? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
I mean, it depends on your actions. Like, ALF did nasty things to free animals. Like, they threatened like people at their houses. They do whatever it takes to break into labs and free animals through illegal methods. And I think if you've seen like the Animal People documentary, you'll get the gist of it. It shows what the ALF does and how ineffective it is, contrary to what the Animal Rebellion and XR does.
Yeah. Carla has an interesting point as well, which is it from our perspective? So yeah, they're not property, but others think so. So it's balanced as far as they're concerned. So again, that's another interesting thing. Like, we might think it's violent or it's not violent, but how somebody else perceives that, does that change that? Yeah, it's an interesting one. Gordy, I might just move on because I'm kind of conscious of time. But yeah, hopefully this is kind of an interesting, like an interesting debate and interesting stuff to think about. And yeah, hopefully we'll kind of you'll keep thinking about this kind of stuff after this training. Cool, really great stuff. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is injustice and oppression. So when we talk about nonviolence, that describes our strategy, but not necessarily the situation in which we find ourselves. And so you don't need to be like a principled pacifist to join in nonviolent direct action. And Animal Rebellion's chosen strategy of nonviolence doesn't prohibit us from standing in solidarity with those using physical force to fight for justice. We also need to recognize that our privilege in the UK, and our relative safety from state violence, which allows many of us to use non-violent direct tactics with little fear of violent retaliation. We also need to acknowledge that we live in an unjust system, and in the UK, that privilege isn't held by everybody. Criminalization, arrest, and police brutality carries greater risk to certain identities, and particularly to people of color. And so we're all responsible for dismantling this unjust system. but we also need to recognize that when we operate within that system, we carry conscious and unconscious biases, and we're responsible for dismantling them as well. Any questions on injustice and oppression? Cool. All right, so we would normally take a break. I'm going to suggest that we just move on for half an hour, and then we take a kind of longer break at around 7:30. Is that cool with everyone? If everyone wants to take a break, then that's fine. Just, I guess, yeah. Okay, well, we'll just move on. We'll move on. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, COVID-19 has led us to think really carefully about how we balance the need to take action and yeah, the need to avert the worsening of the climate and ecological crisis with the need to maintain safety and social distancing. And so when we're preparing to take any action which might lead to arrest, you need to acknowledge that you will be putting yourself and the police at higher risk of COVID transmission. And that's something that you just need to think about and make peace with individually ahead of an action. Obviously, there are ways of radically reducing the risk of transmission. And so we strongly recommend wearing a mask at all times during actions, especially if you're planning on interacting with the police and undergoing the process of arrest. Maintaining as well as possible social distancing from rebels outside of your household. If possible, seeking a COVID test before and after an action. Before the rebellion, that was like not at all possible. Somehow COVID tests have like become much more of a thing now, so which is great. And then lastly, just bringing your own food and drink to actions. Again, just anything that you can do to reduce the risk of COVID transmission during actions, please do. Any questions on COVID-19 and actions? Is that all kind of clear for everyone? Yeah, Gordy.
I think it says strongly recommended. For actions, I think it states that we have to produce a risk assessment, which I think I'll say we have to wear masks and bring hand sanitizer. So is that still left to individuals to I know we have an ethos of being quite open to different people's opinions. I just wonder if there was a particular stance on that, whether it's still down to the individuals.
Yeah, good point. So I guess so we say it's strongly recommended. We can't like physically force anyone to wear a mask if they don't want to. But we would like really strongly recommend that people wear masks, and somebody that doesn't want to wear a mask during an action, we would kind of recommend that they keep their distance from others. Again, just kind of, it's just safer for everybody. I guess the other side of that is that it's also how it reflects on us. So from the outside, seeing a whole bunch of people like taking risks and I guess in a very obvious and kind of blatant way reflects badly on our movement, and so we're kind of very conscious of that as well. And in terms of like risk assessments, I mean, obviously, yeah, like we take risk assessments as much as possible, and yeah, but obviously we can't say that like everybody turning up, like we can somehow force them to do that. Yeah, we just can't say that, so we don't. Does that make sense? Cool. Any other questions on that stuff? Alrighty. Okay, so we'll just do a really quick basic security briefing, and I need to just do this with a massive caveat, which is I am not an expert, I am not a legal expert, I am not some kind of systems security expert. This is stuff that we kind of recommend and we say, but please take all of this with a pinch of salt and do your own research around security. Yeah, so just before I do this, I'll just say that open and transparent organizing has been really beneficial, but also we need to think about security and looking after our data when we're planning actions. And so despite our kind of our very open and very transparent way of organizing, a lot of our actions are really secretly planned out. And there's kind of a place for both transparency and openness and also secrecy when we're organizing. Generally, what I would say is when we're planning big mass actions, it's really good to be transparent. That just means that it's accessible, that everyone knows what's going on, and that everyone can kind of come and join in. But for the kind of spicier stuff, it's good to be secret. Okay, so I'll just read through these. So first thing, really basic, really obvious, don't put others at risk. So we sometimes use code names on actions, particularly if you're kind of planning actions, and definitely don't identify organizers or people kind of more involved in planning the actions openly. That's just a really kind of basic thing. If you are going to take your personal phone on an action, encrypt it. So make sure you've got a password, that any notifications that are coming up aren't, like, you're not sharing any information with that. Bear in mind that it's always a potential listening device, so be cautious what you say in front of your phone. Don't get arrested with your phone. Yeah, again, for the same reasons, that the police could take information from that. So you can think about taking a burner phone on actions. So a burner phone is just like a cheap phone that you can buy, and if you buy it with cash, then it's kind of untraceable to you. If you are kind of ordered or requested to attend a police interview after an action, don't bring your personal phone with you then either, because that could become confiscated. If you're going to be communicating about organizing, we recommend Proton Mail as the best email account and Signal as the best messaging app. Always just bear in mind that no database is totally secure, so some platforms are safer or not so safe. And the ones that we generally use are Signal, Mattermost, and Telegram. And yeah, but none of them are 100% safe. And then lastly, just don't talk openly about covert actions. Again, another really basic thing. That's a really, really, really brief, basic security briefing. And again, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but if there are any questions about this, I can either try and answer them or point you in the direction of information. Are there any questions? Wow, this is not only the part of the training that everyone's like, oh my god, like what messaging app is the best, and what's this and that. Are there really no questions? I'm fine with if there are no questions, but if anyone wants to know more, or kind of has anything that they just want to talk about, that's fine. Oh, sorry, yeah, Sung? Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I was just stretching.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, if there are no questions, then we'll just move on. Cool. All right. So the police. So we uphold our nonviolence in both actions and words towards everybody, and that includes the police. However, we don't support the police, as we recognize that they're the enforcers of the oppressive system that needs to change. As individuals, the police are human beings, and they have diverse views like the rest of society. But when they put on those uniforms, they sacrifice that individuality and also their ability to enact their own moral judgments. So that means that regardless of how they individually feel towards us, and some have really positive or supportive views towards animal rebellion, their ability to act on those feelings is severely restricted when they're working. And yeah, bear in mind that the worst crimes in history have been carried out by normal people following orders. The police play a part in our strategy to pressure the government into making change, but they're not our allies. Successful systems change will involve security forces changing sides, or at least refusing to follow orders. And until we reach that point, we shouldn't be naive about the fact that currently the police, as the enforcement arm of the state, are working to counter the effectiveness of our actions. So what we say is that we're non-cooperative to the police. That means that we're pushing boundaries, and civil disobedience is all about disobeying and resisting. We can be non-cooperative and still be non-violent, and we're challenging the power of the state by disrupting and using non-cooperative resistance towards its enforcement. The more determined our resistance, the greater the dilemma we create, And dilemma actions are really important for us because rather than deferring to others to make changes, we seek to change the dynamics of power directly. Are there any questions about the police and our kind of relationship with them? Yep, Gordy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you cover this or whether it's just the only bit on the police, but just to remember that at actions they might seem like they're very friendly and they're your friends, and then you know they might come along and say, yeah, I'm a vegan, I'm this, that, and the other. Yeah, they do lie. They that is their job, to lie to to get what they want, I guess. It's not illegal for them to lie to us and tell us untruths.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, what we generally say is don't talk to the police. You don't need to in an action. We have a specific police liaison, police liaisons, and they're kind of trained to deal with the police and to be our kind of point of contact with them. So yeah, we during an action we don't have any reason to talk to the police, and so we say just don't. Yeah, that's the general kind of rule of thumb. Michael?
I also want to point out that you also get the police liaison officers and the blue hivers who may not be going out performing arrests or anything, but they are still wearing the body cams and they are still taking notes. And the overall job of the police is, accumulating evidence for prosecution. So, you may be having a polite conversation to, what one of the blue hivers, but they're still taking notes and they're still recording information. And if you do get pinched, then any information that they have accumulated will be passed over to the arresting officers, and that can potentially be used against you as well.
Yeah, so again, just you don't have a reason to talk to the police liaison or the PCSOs, police community support officers. So again, just don't. Anything else on the police? Any other questions or anything else? I don't know what to say. And if not, we'll just move on. Cool. Okay. So this is just the last thing before we just take a break. And it's de-escalation. So whether it's dealing with angry members of the public, or the police, or security guards, or workers, or whoever we're interacting with on an action, good de-escalation is really important to maintaining our non-violence and keeping situations as safe and non-confrontational as possible. And again, because this is an online training, we can't really do the kind of interactive de-escalation stuff that we would normally do. So I'll just kind of go through the main points. So remaining calm and confident and firm, and that's through your voice and also your body language. You can control the volume and pitch of your speech. So that means kind of not shouting or speaking harshly or aggressively or anything. You're not gesticulating wildly. So I'm somebody that really likes to talk with their hands, but when I'm in an action situation, it's really important to be aware of how those gestures could be perceived by others. Putting empathy before education. This is a really important one, particularly for people coming from an animal rights advocacy background. So if you're on a Go Vegan stall or something like that, it's you want to be educating people, you want to be talking to them about the issues, but when we're on an action, the role is slightly different. So when we're dealing with the public, we can honestly empathize with where they're coming from. Maybe they've been disrupted, or maybe they're, I don't know, they can't get to work on time or something. We can honestly empathize with them and understand where they're coming from without preaching to them. And we can kind of engage with people in an honest way. And if they're genuinely interested, we can talk to them about why we're there. But it's really important that we're not kind of going out of our way to do that. Engaging in conversation about wider issues is really good, but only if you're genuinely interested. and listen actively. So don't interrupt others. Demonstrate that you're listening by reflecting back to them what they say. Yeah, all of those are really important. It's also worth saying that de-escalation is primarily for use in our interactions between us as rebels and members of the public, and particularly when rebels are dealing with the police, it's important not to kind of undermine them by kind of policing the tone of their interactions. Yeah, we just don't want to be undermining others, basically. On an action, we will always have dedicated, trained de-escalators at every action. And we also run de-escalation training if you want to get involved with that. I don't know if is there one coming up, George, anytime soon?
I think we've just had one. So the next one, which I went to, I think last week, but the next one will be in Jan, probably sometime around there.
Yeah, but if anyone's interested in going to one of those trainings, we can signpost that too. Any questions on de-escalation? Cool. Okay, so I think let's take a break there, and let's take about a 15-minute break. So we'll just come back at just after half past, and we'll do part two. So part two is much more kind of about the practical side of stuff. Yeah, so I'll see you everyone at past. Hey everyone. We'll just, I think, wait maybe a minute more, just so everyone's got a chance to get back. There were a couple of people that had to go sadly. So I think George and Melody have gone. I think there was Samantha was here before as well, but I think she's not here anymore. I don't know if she's planning on coming back, but yeah. All right, maybe we'll just get going, and then I think that's everybody that's here anyway. Okay, cool. So yeah, so as I said earlier, part two is kind of the more like action focused stuff, the more practical stuff. So we've done the thinking, and now we're gonna do the action, the acting. And we don't have to do the whole introductions. So yeah, so the first exercise. So this is an angry public exercise, and it's a kind of role playing exercise. And we're gonna split into breakout rooms again. And so if it comes up saying breakout room group 1, so I want you to be the angry public. So I want you to think about what kind of thoughts, feelings, and reactions you might have to a group of protesters who are blocking your road to work. If you're in group 2, I want you to think about, I want to be the rebels, and I want you to think about how you're going to respond to members of the public who get angry that you're blocking the road. I'll just post this question in the chat again. And in fact, I'll just tell you now who's going to be in which group. That's probably probably going to be easier. So, Gordy, Steph, and Carla, you're going to be group 1. So you're going to be the angry public, okay? And then the second one is going to be Skeet, Michael, and Sung, okay? And you're going to be the rebels. Everyone got that? Cool. And we'll do, how long should we do? Let's say 4 minutes. Okay, so you've got 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and compare notes. Carla, if you just want to join, and then you can still use the chat in the group. That's fine. But also, if you don't want to, that's cool. Hey, Validator, if you can hear me. Yeah, you got it. Carla, feel free to join the breakout group room. Can you see the little thing? It says join breakout room. Maybe not. Okay, that's fine. Yep, don't worry. All right. So group one, the angry public. So I think that was Gordy. Who was that? Gordy,
Me
Steph,
and
and
Melody.
Melody. Yeah. Okay. So does somebody want to just sum up what you talked about?
Does anyone volunteer, or is that me?
Go on, Gordy.
I wrote it all down. So let me go with that. So thoughts and feelings. So we'll go with feelings first. There's going to be obviously anger. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be stress. They're going to be upset. They're going to be worried, impatient. Any number of feelings. Thoughts are thoughts along the lines of like, why are you here? How long are you going to be here? How's this going to affect, can I get to work? How's this going to affect my day? What's my boss going to say, et cetera, et cetera. And the way they're going to react is going to be, quite heated. It's going to be angry. It's going to be shouting, threats of violence, possibly violence, possibly physical violence, even to the point of trying to push their way through if there is a blockade. They might try to even drive through if that's what's actually happening. Have I covered everything? Yeah. Anyone else? Can think of anything else?
I think that's pretty extensive, Gordy. That's pretty good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and then the second group. So that was Skeet, Michael, and Sung. Does somebody want to sum up how we can respond to that when we're on a road?
I do.
Yeah, Sung.
So yes, like we get that they're waiting to get to work and all that, but at the same time, we're just trying to like make them listen to our thoughts, not as if we're forcing them, as we're waiting on the road before we move out.
Yeah, Michael, you want to add?
Yeah, I think the important thing too is how you are engaging with an angry public, and because they are angry and upset, just let them tell you everything. Just let them vent. Let them tell you everything. Don't interrupt. Just let them tell you absolutely everything that's going on, and also make note of everything that's going on in their lives. So when they are finished, venting and telling you all of the horrible things that I totally understand that, yeah, you have to go pick up your kids, and you're already 15 minutes late to work, and you're going to be another 30 by the time you get out of traffic. Just that reiterating everything that they've been telling you will also let them know that you are paying attention to them. You are paying attention to their woes and to their troubles, and that we are not just here acting on our interests and the interests of what our action is, but we're also being mindful of everyone else. And just having that little bit of engagement in the dialogue does stretch miles in terms of just general engagement. So just remaining calm, collected, and engage, and just let them say absolutely everything that they want to say, and just acknowledge everything that they are saying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you can do that in quite an honest way. You don't have to fake that. You can very honestly empathize and say, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I hate being late too, and it's shit that you're disrupted in whatever way. Yeah, and quite often we do get people who are angry in the moment, but then that come back half an hour later and say, yeah, I'm really sorry that I got angry. Like I understand why you're here, and I think it's really important. And yeah, so we can very honestly and very very in a very real way empathize. Yeah, I think that's really good point. Okay, so the next thing is about practical resistance. So we're going to kind of cover some practical tips for resisting during actions. And all of these techniques are really just ways of extending resistance. Generally, it can be carried out without injuring ourselves, without increasing physical risk. That's fine, Samantha. Don't worry about your internet. So they can generally be carried out without increasing physical risk, but obviously they are physical techniques, and they also all depend on interacting with the police. So there's obviously inherently some risk of both kind of bodily harm, but also COVID, which we covered earlier. Obviously, this is an online training, so there's only really so much I can practically show you. But this is maybe more of just like an introduction to some of these techniques. And on an action, you can kind of see how it's done. And there will be lots of experienced people around as well, so you can get chatting, ask questions, don't be shy, and get involved. All right. So the first technique is going floppy. So why do we go floppy? Why do we use this technique? Does anyone know? Samantha?
I was reading that it is quite good because it can make the police response look over the top and kind of put the observers in the favor of the protesters rather than the police reaction.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of looks very silly if you've got 5 people carrying away one person that's lying down. Yeah. Any other reasons that we want to use that technique? Gordy?
It makes it more difficult to remove someone. So yeah, so they do need 5 people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It uses up more police resources. And actually, yeah, there was an article in the Guardian, like with like the senior police officer who was saying like, yeah, this is a real pain in the ass for us. It takes us 5 times the number of people to move protesters, and obviously that slows them down. It allows us to resist for longer. If we're holding a roadblock, it means that we can hold it much longer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, glue-ons and lock-ons. So yeah, so that's just gluing onto something, gluing onto an object or a building. So why do we want to use these techniques? What's the purpose of these? Michael?
Similar to going floppy, except more in a specific area where it takes them longer to remove you from the place that you're protesting at. And yeah, just taking time and more time and energy for police to move you on, and increasing the amount of time that the group is able to be on site.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so similar to going floppy, it just allows us to resist for longer. It also allows us to kind of use a specific target. So say we want to lock onto a specific building or a specific, I don't know, like a monument or something. So it can be very targeted in that way. It also creates a dilemma for the police. So it creates this dilemma of, do we just let them there? Do we kind of bring in the heavy artillery and cut them off? And again, bringing in that aspect of it makes the response look excessive. So yeah, so all of those things. What do you think that we need to think about before using either of these tactics? I might just get somebody else that hasn't spoken. Steph, what do you think?
I'll start to volunteer. Maybe if there's any danger from the public, if you're going to be stuck onto a building.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, and also danger to ourselves potentially. Yeah. Anything else that we don't want to think about? Ski, you've got kind of worried faces. What do you think?
What was the question, Rob?
So what do we need to think about before using these tactics?
Well, the safety of the people involved, the logistics of it, like what's what's going to happen in terms of like who's likely to come and remove them and stuff, things like that.
Yeah, Gordy.
You also got a high possibility of arrest. More than, well, yeah, definitely arrest, isn't it? And yeah, if it's onto a building, for example, or anywhere that needs access for emergencies, then we have to put that into consideration. The well-being of the person who's being locked on for the length, and there has to be a set length that you're hoping to achieve. So you account for all that with, you know, food and water and keeping warm, etc.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and on that, so if you end up kind of going over the duration of the time that you want to be there, being able to detach and either if you're glued on with like a debonder, like acetone, or if you're locked on, having a key or a combination, and having that with a trusted person. So basically, being able to detach when you want to, or when you need to, or if there's an emergency is important. Yeah, that's basically that. Are there any questions on any of that? No. Cool. Okay. Painting the streets. So painting the streets is something that we use quite a lot. Yeah, essentially just chalk spraying or paint spraying to kind of decorate targets. It's a really useful tactic because it allows precise targeting. And it's law breaking, law bending, and kind of pushing at the boundaries, but in a kind of more accessible way. And it allows a kind of complete fusion of action and message, which is quite useful as well. Yeah, it's a more accessible action. It requires fewer people and can be carried out socially distanced. That's useful. And you can be arrested or prosecuted for like criminal damage or something like that. But the legal consequences are, yeah, basically much less severe, and the risk is much less. And so it's a kind of more accessible way for people maybe new to civil disobedience. Cool. Okay. Okay, so the action cycle. So basically the action cycle just refers to the whole process of taking part in an action from start to finish. So it's really important that we recognize that the action isn't just what happens when you're on the action site. It's all of the stuff that builds up to the action and also what happens after the action. And at various different stages of the action cycle, we need to be thinking about different things. And the focus is different. So yeah, I'll just run through these really quickly. So yeah, at the beginning stages, we want to be using our support systems. So if you're in an affinity group, we'll talk about affinity group later, but if you're in one, or if you've just got a buddy or someone like that, you want to be kind of building those support systems and using the support systems. And that's really important. An action will have a briefing. So action planners will always plan a briefing for everyone involved. It's important that you understand the action in its entirety. And that this is a chance for you to kind of ask questions, to get familiar, and essentially to be prepared. Really important that you understand security. So yeah, I mean, the basic security briefing that we had before, but also understanding the security of that particular action. So are you going to take your phone? Are you going to have a burner phone? What kind of tech are you going to take with you? How are you going to organize the action? If you're using code names, what's everyone's code names on the action? All of those things that make you secure in the action. And then your checklist. So do you have everything that you need for the action? Are you locking on? Are you gluing on? Have you got everything you need for that? Have you got water for the action? Have you got enough food? Have you got medicine? Have you got blankets? All of those things are really important before you take action. And then in the middle of the action, the actual action itself. So this is the point that you're going to use those support systems that you've got in place, your affinity group or your buddy, using de-escalation techniques that we talked about. So that's kind of remaining calm, being grounded. Remember why you're doing it, what it means to you. Bearing in mind how to talk to the police, how to interact with the police. And being patient. So actions can take a long time. they can also be really boring. So if you're locked onto something for hours on end, you need to be prepared for that, and don't expect entertainment. And yeah, be patient. And then after the action, so the action isn't over until the whole process is done. So if you've been arrested, that's being in the police cell and going through that process, potentially going to court, etc., etc. And there will always be a debrief. So action planners will always plan a debrief at the end of an action, and that's your chance to kind of get feedback on both the good and the bad things about the action, and kind of decompress a bit after the action. It can be a really intense process, and so the debrief is a place to kind of to get rid of that energy. And if you found it stressful or kind of high adrenaline, it's really important to kind of, for your psychological and also physical well-being, to talk to others and share that experience. Is that clear? Does everyone get the kind of concept of the action cycle? Yeah. Any questions on that? All right. So I mentioned affinity groups. Okay, so in fact, I'll go back to, I'll go back. So what is an affinity group? Can anyone give me like a one sentence definition? Michael?
An offshoot of the main group.
Mm-hmm. Skeet, do you want to add to
that? Just like your immediate group, usually about 4 or 5 people or so, that sort of keep track of each other, look out for each other, make sure we're all right, and if we're getting arrested, they know who to inform, things like that.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So the affinity group support network defines affinity groups as any group which supports each other to carry out an action in whatever form. So yeah, affinity groups is like a really broad term. So it could be formed to carry out an action and then that stays together for the action cycle and then kind of disbands. It could be longer, it could be bigger. I mean, we've had some affinity groups exist like since like before Anna Rebellion existed, and are still together and kind of have this real bond. And yeah, it's to support each other at whatever time, whether it be on an action or not. It could also be an affinity group that forms for a very specific purpose. So you could have a steroids affinity group or like a well-being affinity group that is just formed for this one very specific purpose. Yeah, or in the last example there, making communication easier between local regional groups and people wanting to take part. Generally speaking, we would say that for an action affinity group, would have between about 8 and 15 people. It could be less, it could be more. It just kind of depends. And it usually has specific roles within it. So you could have like a general coordinator who's kind of looking after the whole group, a well-being coordinator looking after well-being in the group, communication coordinator looking after communication in the group. Yeah, the important thing for affinity groups is that they're flexible and they communicate with each other about changes that might happen. So yeah, you might have an affinity group that forms on the first day of rebellion, and then I don't know, somebody leaves on the second day, or half the group goes and forms another affinity group, and then other people join. It's really important that it's always flexible and always changeable depending on what's needed. Any questions on affinity groups? Cool. All right. Okay, so songs and chants. As I said, we're not going to be doing any songs and chants. We're just going to talk about them. Yeah, so songs and chants. What's the point of songs and chants on an action? What are they for? Gordy.
They set the tone of the action, so it's it can be an upbeat, it can be a camaraderie type thing. They're used to spur morale. If it's a long action like a lock on, etc., and it can be used to de-escalate instances as well. Again, with the the setting the tone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, yeah, it changes the atmosphere. Yeah, so if you want it to be a very kind of somber atmosphere, then the songs will set that atmosphere. On the other hand, if you want it to be really cheerful and lively, then you can use songs and chants to create that atmosphere. And it changes the atmosphere for better or worse. So some songs and chants are inappropriate and will change the atmosphere for the worse. What are some inappropriate songs or chants? What would they be? Michael?
Yeah, anything you might overhear at a football game.
Yep. Yeah. So offensive or anything with a slur or anything like that in it. Yeah, obviously inappropriate. Anything else? Ski?
I remember at the Billingsgate action when we got cut off by a row of police and we were sort of nose to nose with them. Someone started chanting, "Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like," which is a great chant and everything, but it was quite a forceful sort of faintly like aggressive chant, and I think in that particular context it was like possibly a bit too confrontational.
Yeah, the other thing with that chat in particular is people love to do it when there's like 3 people there, and it sends completely the opposite message, right? Like democracy looks like 3 people in the pissing rain, like out with their placards or something. So yeah, obviously context is really important. Yeah, I think anything offensive, anything inciting violence, also anything that's off message. So obviously in Anna Rebellion we have a very inclusive, very yeah, we have a very specific message, and so things like a chant like "Go Vegan" or anything with kind of individual change messaging is what we want to avoid, and will change the atmosphere for the worst. Obviously, that's completely fine in a different situation, and we're not against that. But it's just on our actions. Anything that's off message will change the atmosphere for the worse. So we want to avoid that. Songs and chants can also be useful for drowning out the noise of the police giving instructions. That's a really, really, really useful legal defense for like a Section 14 order. If you can kind of argue that you couldn't hear what the police were saying because someone was chanting in your ear, that's really useful. And that can strengthen your defense later. Yeah, and basically learn the lyrics, follow the leaders, the people with the strong voices, and basically get involved. The more people that we have singing, the more people that we have joining in the chants, basically the better. And also they can just be really fun. I think it's like one of my favorite things about actions. It's yeah, yeah, cool. Any questions about any of that, songs and chants? I think that's all pretty clear. All right. Oh, sorry, Gordon. Yeah.
Animal Rebellion have a bunch of chants that they use quite often. Does everyone know where they are?
So we have run like trainings and stuff in the past with songs. So I think that would be. I mean, like in the lead up to Rebellion, we kind of put on that a few times. I'm not sure if are they located in like one place? Is there like I actually don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd imagine they were. I might go and look for them and see if I can find them.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, also they're all very kind of easy to pick up, so it should be easy to kind of turn up and hear a verse and then kind of join in. Sorry, Skeet, if you got.
Yeah, there's actually a playlist that George is assembling, basically for the choir. I guess I can't remember the name of it. I think it is just Animal Rebellion. Like if you search that in Spotify, that has some songs on there. But actually, Gordy, if you find any recordings of those other ones, or if you find them on Spotify anywhere, pop them in, because like I know the choir's sort of wanting to assemble a load of songs so we can go out and terrify the police with our
Lovely, lovely dulcet tones.
Yeah, that's another thing that's going to be happening soon is an Anna Rebellion choir. So if anyone wants to get involved in that, George is the person. Yeah. So hopefully that will help our songs and chants as well. Cool. Okay, so the next thing is police hassle lines. So yeah, hassle line is basically just you've probably seen them if you've been on an action. A big long line of police that are kind of moving towards you to try and intimidate you. So I want you to imagine that you're blocking a road, and the police are coming towards you, trying to intimidate you, and their job is to move you on, and yours is obviously to stay put. So I want you to think about, and again, we'll do this group 1 and group 2 thing. And I'll just tell you who's in which group again. But group 1, I want you to think about what training do you think the police have had to deal with us, to deal with nonviolent direct action, and what kind of things are they going to say or do to move you on, and how might they say those things. And then group 2, I want you to think about what kind of things we can do to stay put, to disobey, and how we might be feeling when we're doing that, and also what we don't want to do or say in response. So again, I've just put those in the chat, and again, I'll just tell you who's in which group once again. So group 1 is going to be Carla, Gordy, Melody, and Steph. Carla, if you want to join in, that'd be cool. But if you don't want to, that's fine. And then group 2 is going to be Michael, Skeet, and Sam. Is everyone clear on what's required? And again, we'll have, let's say, 3 minutes for this. All right, I'll come back and compare. Oh, that's right. And Sam, you're going to be in group 2. All right. So group one, so that's Gordy, Melody, and Steph, right? Would somebody like to just sum up what you talked about? In fact, I'll nominate Melody to speak this time.
Damn it. Right. So yeah, training for the policemen. Yes, we said they might have some special members of the police force trained to do specific things like removing people from whatever whatever they're locked on or glued on. So some sort of technicians or that type of policeman. For the second point of our question, we were saying they might try to scare you by telling you that in the end that you might get arrested and that you're doing illegal things, which maybe is not necessarily true. And they might get your details. They might ask you to give them your details, although you don't have to. That's it. I think I said everything we said.
Yeah. That's all absolutely right. Okay, and then the second group, and I might just pick on Samantha to just sum up what you talked about.
So our kind of key message was that you shouldn't engage with them at all as your way of reacting when they're trying to move you on, and that would probably be the most effective way of dealing with the police for several reasons. Also, like, because it keeps the situation calm, but also because it can avoid you accidentally acknowledging one of the sections that I can't remember the number of, and that ideally you don't want to engage at all. And that sums up most of our conversation.
Yeah. Michael, do you want to just add something?
I also entered in a bit of an anecdote that that I participated in during the Halloween action outside of Buckingham Palace. Was that I was one of the first people that the police started coming up to and saying, you guys have to move on. And I was able to keep my presence outside of Buckingham Palace for a bit longer by just simply moving to the opposite end of the crowd, but not hurriedly, but just kind of scuffling my feet and finding ways to keep myself busy in the interim. And when the police, it was the same copper who came over and told me that I've told you this already, you have to leave now. I once again, I had to make my way through the crowd, get to the other side. And by the time I was on the other side, they were already starting to arrest people. So moving around is a good way to keep your presence at the site. And before we got taken out of the room, one of the things that I want to say is for a lot of new people, having that interaction with the police is quite nerve-wracking and quite daunting. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to get over the stigma in your mind that only bad people get arrested and only bad people have these types of confrontations with the police. It's not just the bad people. It's people who are going out and protesting that do have these types of interactions with the police. It's part of their job is to break up groups like this. So it's not just the bad people that you see on those I can't remember the name of any of the television shows like Cops or anything like that where people are like but it's also peaceful protest groups that do also have those interactions. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean being nervous around the police is absolutely a valid feeling. Also maybe anger towards the police in some way, but also maybe joy as well. Maybe kind of like really feeling like you have a purpose and that you really have that you're really taking a stand. So I think really any feelings are valid. Yeah, yeah, cool. Alrighty, and we just have 20 minutes to go. You'll all be very pleased to know. Okay, so this is a decision-making exercise. So we're gonna we're gonna kind of do a bit of a role play. You guys here are gonna be a group planning an action. I'll read out the scenario, and you'll have 5 minutes to make a decision. There's a decision that you've made, and you're gonna make the decision. It's worth saying the purpose of the exercise is to kind of get us thinking about how we make decisions. It's not necessarily so important that we actually make the decision, but yeah. Okay, so I'll read out the scenario and then I'll mute myself for 5 minutes, and hopefully we'll come to a decision at the end of that. Okay, so here's the scenario. You've planned an action with 2 affinity groups. It involves blocking the road outside the local BBC headquarters. You've not made the action public, but when you get to your target, 2 police vans are already there, parked just a few meters away from where you planned to deploy. You're there with one of the tripods in a van, and the other is still on the way with the other affinity group. A couple of police officers are already standing further up the street, and they keep looking over at where you're parked. What do? You got 5 minutes.
First of all, I want to get a temperature check to see if everyone is happy to go ahead with the action outside of BBC. So if you are wanting to go ahead, can I just see a show of hands? Okay. Is there anyone who would feel that we should postpone the action for another day? Let's see a show of hands for that. Yeah, Gordy?
I think first of all we need to contact the other affinity group that's on their way to.
Yeah, they're on their way. Yeah, they're not. Sorry. Yeah.
To let them know what's happening, and then together we can work on whether we want to go ahead with, and yeah, the temperature check is a really great way of doing that. Is to whether we want to go ahead with that particular action or go to Plan B or Plan C or Plan D, which we would have organised ahead of time. So maybe that was to go to a different location to do the action, etc. But yeah, definitely doing the whole temperature check to see, to make sure everyone has their voice heard is an important thing to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's get in touch with the other group. Yeah, we should probably meet up at a different location just so that we can go ahead and have a quick chat with them to see if we want to go ahead with outside of BBC.
Yeah, because there's many things that could happen. I mean, the police might be there because they've had a tip off. They might be there just randomly. They might go away in 10 minutes time. So all these sort of considerations have to be discussed, I guess. And yeah, meeting somewhere else would be a good idea so that everyone can discuss what's going on.
Okay, so we've met up with the other affinity group at park or something, and now we're taking temperature check. Who would like to send a scout over to BBC to see if the police are still there, or if we would want to just go ahead and reschedule for another day? So who would be in favor of rescheduling the action for another day? Okay, so we'll go ahead and send a couple of scouts over to the BBC. BBC say that the police are still there. Any thoughts or ideas on how to proceed further? Any ideas? Yeah, Gordy.
I mean, plan B might have been to have a different location. So the BBC might have been the A location, and we might have a B
You have 1
location.
minute left.
Time goes by so quickly. Or even like plan D might have been to reschedule it for the following day, etc. So I think all these things will have to be considered. Or even if there's because I guess the thing is you're not going to be able to do the lock on while there's police there, because they're going to stop you doing. You want to be locked on prior to the police being there. So I guess that's the main consideration by doing this, especially if you've got a tripod you have to set up, etc.
Well, a similar thing to do is we could have a couple of members of the affinity group as sort of decoy, attracting police attention away, while lock-ons, sneak in past the police. So we could have like one part of the affinity group posing as like student news, and attracting
Okay,
attention.
Time's up. Okay, you failed.
Yeah, no.
No decision made. Okay. The important thing is not that we actually made the decision. The important thing is to kind of reflect on how we make decisions. Okay, so how do you think that went? Obviously, we didn't kind of get to a decision in the end. Yeah, Gordy.
Badly, because there wasn't much interaction from the rest of the team, which is obviously good to have, because we can't make a decision with just one or two of us. We need the whole team to get involved in decision making.
Yeah. Okay. So just to reflect, So Gordy and Michael, you were doing the majority, if not all, of the talking, and there was little kind of engagement from the rest of the group. So for the others, did you feel satisfied with that decision making process? What was your kind of experience, Melody?
I think anyway, I couldn't see the others, but if you can vote, if you have two options and you're given two options and you can vote, that is still democratic. Then obviously there has to be someone that leads the conversation, because otherwise, it's hard to come down to two options. Maybe we could have 10 options and it's going to take ages to agree on something, but I don't know. Maybe in different situations it might be different.
Yeah, and actually, you said it right at the start of the training, or at the start of the exercise, Gordy. Temperature checks are a really, really good way of immediately getting consensus. You can look around an entire group, and if you say, "Can I get a temperature check on doing this?" and everyone's waving their hands, and you know that everyone's on board. Yeah, that's obviously much quicker than everyone going around and saying that they agree. So getting consensus is really, really good. But also recognizing the kind of group dynamic, that if you just have one person leading everything and kind of no one else is happy with that, then obviously that's an issue. Okay, we're going to do that once again with a different scenario, and we're going to only have 3 minutes this time, and let's see if we can get to a decision at the end, just reflecting on how that went just there. Okay, so we're going to do it once again. So second scenario. So you're planning to block the entrance of the headquarters of a big bank with links to the fossil fuel industry. You've planned for exactly 10 rebels to glue their hands to the entrance and block it entirely. It's important that you glue onto the entrance before the bank opens at 8 a.m. so that you're not seen to be blocking anyone inside the building. At 7:30, you arrive with 5 of the rebels, and the other 5 have messaged to say that they're stuck on a bus in traffic and will be 20 minutes late. You know, having measured the entrance, that 5 rebels are not enough to cover the entrance, but you have all the equipment and people are ready to go. What do? You have 3 minutes. Go.
Does somebody else want to take the lead this time?
do we want to like elect a facilitator, or do we have time for that?
I don't think we have time for that. It's
Okay.
it's go time. Yeah.
Cool. Do we have can we have like wavy hands about whether we proceed or whether we wait, whether we delay to a different time? I can't see anyone, by the way, so like this it's very hard for me to tell what's going on.
Could we make an amendment to the chain instead of gluing ourselves solely to the entrance of the building? Could we have two people, instead of one person having both hands glued to the building, have one person with one hand and then the other hand glued to another hand, so we're taking up more space. So two people are essentially the width of one person. So basically modifying the original idea.
Okay, so we've got three potential options then. We either sort of modify it, we cancel, delay for like another day, or I think those are basically the options, actually. Two options, which makes it easier. So what does everyone think? I guess we need a temperature check on either of those. First one, that we modify the idea and we crack on. Do we want to give up like wavy hands up here or wavy hands down there?
We'll modify it if it's possible. I can't picture.
1 minute left.
I wonder if it might be more impactful to do it another day and pull it off properly.
Yeah, I would be thinking that we'd be better off probably waiting for the guys, and if we get a few people stuck in the bank, it's a couple of people. I don't think it's the end of the world. That would be my personal thought.
Yeah, everyone in favor.
At 8 o'clock, they're probably that everyone's going into work. So
yeah, so all those in favor of holding off? All right.
Was that a consensus or not?
That was a consensus.
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Okay, yeah, what went much better that time? So why did it go much better? What was kind of what was different? Yep, Gordy.
We nailed down the scenarios that the plan A's and plan B's. We actually nailed them down. Whereas the previous one, we knew we had them, we just didn't know what they were. Whereas this time we just made them up on the fly.
Yeah, absolutely. So having limitations, having clear choices, yeah, that's really important. Also, the group dynamic was very different. Yeah, much more engagement from others. So kind of recognizing that dynamic, and recognizing where you've got kind of where you want to have more people involved. That also clearly helps. Yeah, and also there is much more urgency. Yeah, so there's no, oh, what if we did it this way? It was like really focused on making a decision. And it's also worth bearing in mind that you don't always even have 3 minutes. Sometimes you really need to make a decision on the fly and just live with it. So yeah. Again, the point of that exercise is not to really make a decision about anything, but hopefully that kind of introduces some thinking around like decision making and group dynamics and group decision making, and I find that exercise fascinating. I really love it. I think it's really, really interesting, just seeing how people kind of react to that situation. So yeah, Gordy?
Yeah, I guess one of the important things that came from that is when planning actions, make sure you do think of every scenario that could happen, so that you have your bases already covered. So when you hit the ground, you already know, and you can throw out the options there rather than just going, wonder if we do it like this, or
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okie doke. So very last thing, just before we wrap up, I want to just talk about what happens after action. So what happens after the action is as important as what happens during or before. So debriefs happen. That's part of our regenerative culture. And a debrief should be planned by all action planners. And if you're planning any actions, make sure you plan a debrief as well. And that's, again, just a space to decompress after the action. So yeah, you'd have check-ins, you might have active listening exercises, a kind of open discussion or a feedback session around what happened, what went well, what didn't go so well, and also how we felt during the action. It's important that we're always, so yeah, so basically the way that I measure a good action is if it makes me more likely to carry out more actions in the future. And that's the gold standard for me, that if I feel empowered after an action, then I know that that action was good. And also court support is part of that after action. And it's worth bearing in mind that that is also part of the action, what happens to arrestees and the kind of process that they have to go through with the court afterwards. Cool. Okay, that is the end of this training. So are there any kind of questions about anything that's come up? I'm aware that we've kind of talked about a lot, but are there any questions really on anything that we've covered so far? No? All right. Okay, well, if there are no questions, then what I want to invite is feedback. So obviously we're constantly adapting this training. We always want it to be better, and we can always be improving. And that's really like a central part of our kind of DNA in Anaerobic Rebellion. And so if there's any feedback, either on like the design or the delivery or anything about this training, I'll hold space for that now, but you can also put it in the chat. You can send it to me privately, or you can email me afterwards. Yeah, Michael.
I also yeah, just would like to highlight the importance of going to debriefs, because not every action is you leave with a sense of fulfillment or vibe or anything like that. Case in point was the Halloween action. Absolutely everybody, because we were just outside of Buckingham Palace for all of 15 minutes, hardly no time at all before the police started breaking us up. Everybody was just walking away, just completely distraught and very anticlimactic point to the evening. And if you just leave the action feeling like that, it can just make you feel incredibly flat. And with the action on Halloween, I did find the debrief that we did then to be quite uplifting, because it was a good sense to know that, not the only one to feel that way. And we were also able to look more into what we could have done different or what went wrong, things that could have been done. So it's a good way to have a continued conversation with each of us, and to think about what we can do next. So I would definitely highlight the importance of more of the importance on the debrief.
Yeah, it's a really important point. Cool. Okay, so we'll just do a quick closing round. Just before I do that, consent is consent has to be continuous, and so consent for the recording has to be continuous. And I just want to check in with that again. Is everyone still happy to be recorded? And if not, I can delete the file, and it's not a problem. And you can feel free to message me privately about that as well. I will just delete the recording if anyone has an issue with that. And then secondly, I would love to send you all an email. So Carla, I can send you the slides. I can send you more resources and other stuff. If you want an email from me, just put your email in the chat now, or anytime before the end of the training, and I will do that. And And then we'll just do a closing round just to kind of wrap things off. I just want to know one thing that has been new for you that you've learnt from today's session. Would anyone like to start? Everyone's just typing their emails in. I'm aware of that. Michael, yeah.
Yeah, I'm obviously the person who's being the biggest mouth for this group here, so apologies in advance. Yeah, it's I've done this one before, and yeah, have gone through, like with the scenario of the actions. It is different doing it this time than it was the first time that I did it. The first time was very much, you know, like deer in the headlights, where you just kind of freeze up and don't know what to do. You don't want to say the wrong thing. This time I did feel more relaxed and more comfortable, but it still is a good way to highlight different types of forward thinking and highlight just broader personal brainstorming, so you can brainstorm more with the collective. Yeah, and it's just something that I thoroughly enjoy, and yeah, also do try to take that over to my day-to-day life and you know, paid work.
Cool. And yeah, feel free to pass to somebody else in the group with the same question.
Sam.
Is that me or Sung? I can never tell.
Sam, yes, it was you.
Okay. One thing I've learned, I didn't know that you guys did the debriefs after the protest actions. I think that's really nice. I can imagine that being really helpful. And I know I didn't say one thing, but I think I've also learned that there's a lot more cohesion in the group than I knew there was before. So that's really nice. It's a nice thing to take away from this. So I'll pass to Cordy.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, really good workshop here. Rob, you did an excellent job as always. Thanks for that. Yeah, positive feedback all the way. That was really enjoyable. Except always seemed the time we get in little groups never seems long enough. It's we're always like freaking out, but that's good. Puts under pressure. One thing I've learned from today's session is I don't know, just keep doing these trainings, because the more trainings you do, the more you learn, and they do overlap, which is quite nice. So what you learn from one training, you take to the next training, and it's really cohesive how they're all working together. You can, knowledge is power after all. Yeah, really enjoyed tonight. It's great. I'll pass to Steph.
Thank you. Couldn't find my cursor. I have learned, many things. So, and that I need to keep going to lots of trainings like this. This is my first big one. So, I think probably the biggest thing I've learned as well is the most interesting thing is like the practical. Just looking at my notes, the practical resistance techniques, like why they're used, like the reasons behind them as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed the session. It's actually gone really quick as well, and I enjoyed all the little the breakout rooms, getting to learn a lot of things, and I've got a lot of things to think about as well. So thank you, and I will pass to Sung.
Sung, I don't know if you're there. Do you want to just join in the closing round? Just one thing that you learned from today.
All I can say is that this was more of a bonus training after I received from XR, and even though some of the experiences I had didn't help out, it still boosted me up as I learn from it, and I'm looking forward to more of this as other rebellions are opening to become active in the future of trainings and all that. And all I can say is that I'm proud to be part of this group, and hopefully if there's some local chapters in US, then I'll go for it.
Yeah, so just on that song, I will pass your email on to the international team and we'll sort you out.
Thank you.
Anyone that's not been, Carla, I don't know if you want to just put a closing thing in the chat. And is there anyone that's not been? I wasn't really paying attention. Skeet, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rob. It was great. One thing I've learned, well, I think we need to polish our decision-making processes somewhat, but it's an interesting sort of thought experiment to kind of consider what you do in those kind of situations, particularly like planning actions at the moment, and sort of, yeah, having to kind of consider what we would do if we arrived and the cops were already there and we spent 6 months planning something. It's like, do we still dive in on that, or have you reached the point of no return? But yeah, it's all very useful. I'll pass to whoever's left because I can't see anyone. If not, back to Rob.
I think that's it. That's everyone, right? Has anyone not been that wants to go? Nope, we good. Cool. Well, thank you for coming, everyone, and hopefully I'll see you in action soon. And if not, at some point in the future. And have a good evening or rest of the day, and see you again.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye now.